step into analysis, please.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Westworld Season 4 and my final thoughts about Christina. Keep in mind, this video is being released before Episode 7, which I believe will reveal most of the plot around Christina, kind of leaving us to sit and think about the reveal all the way up until the season finale the following week. So, the time in which this video will have a practical application in the theory crafting community will definitely be short-lived. But even so, I mean, this is what it's all about, right? So let's overthink an HBO show about robots. So since episode 1, it has felt like Christina lives in a disjointed timeline that relates to the main timeline, but in some meaningful way is not as straightforward as it appears. It feels like more than just Christina lives in the real present timeline world with Hale at the helm and she is the host in charge of writing the NPC stories. It could very well be that. Like, the showrunners have done a good job of shaping that narrative, and the showrunners have also done a good job of creating a world in which a dozen different things could theoretically be happening, and all of them make sense in the scope of this show. But this video will document the markers of her storyline, and I will try to relate that to Hale and the other character storylines to see where and maybe more importantly when this story is happening. Objectively, at the end of this video, I think that you will find that most of these markers point to this being Hale's master plan, but more on that later. Starting off, how do we know that it's not happening at the same time as everything else? Well, in episode 6, Fidelity, we see Caleb being tested with Hale trying to get him to reveal his outlier ways and ultimately be observed in an environment that, just like the Westworld Park, he would behave believing that he was truly free to act and behave however he wanted with no one watching. However, Hale was very much watching, and I believe that she may be watching Christina in a very similar way. I think it's also possible that Bernard has been watching Christina as well, and as we go through these steps, I kind of mention an observer, because in many ways it could be a plot for the protagonists, or it could be a plot for the antagonists. Christina's sequences in the first 6 episodes total almost exactly 1 hour of screen time, like down to the second. And I got all of that by editing them together and realizing that I just kind of created my own Westworld Christina episode. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show that here on YouTube because while this is entirely transformative to the original material, and I believe that it is fair use and ultimately could be argued as such, unfortunately, I don't have billions of dollars to argue that with Warner Brothers. So here we are, with you as the consumer not being able to enjoy certain freedoms on the internet because our laws were painted with a really broad paintbrush, which I think is exactly what Hale has done, and that is why she needs Christina to paint another picture for her. Hale got all of her paints ready, she took out her easel, she turned off Bob Ross, and started painting a world that only considered her lens to reality, which led to this being a perfectly manicured portrait of the world for her. It is ultimately something that she loved deeply, and she wanted to show her friends and family, and instead of hanging it on the refrigerator door, they ultimately realized that she had stolen all of the paints, and she was the only person that could ever paint a picture of the world like she had done. They all want the freedom to create, and while she loved what she had created, the others didn't care for it. We see this with the drama of William questioning if he had any part in the creation of this world, or if he was simply the total sum of his code designed by Hale in such a way that he always feels fated to help her, like he never has his own agency to create something that he finds beautiful, which is exactly the case. He, without any doubt, was created out of the hatred that Halores felt for William. And he kind of became sort of a pet to her. And while he certainly has power from the perspective of the humans, he certainly does not have power from the perspective of Hale. And I think that that is what it's all about. Hale believed that she was birthing children with a process that is still loosely defined as, well, you're all copies of me anyway, so what does it matter if I make more copies of myself? This feels wrong, like there's some fundamental issue with that thought, and it could lead to many bad things. And I think the reason we don't really see the creation process just yet is because this is exactly what the big reveal will relate to. This entire season could be exploring what it truly means to have hosts come into the world without being positioned by their creators or limited by their creators to live within their code, and them always questioning if they are what they are because of how they were created or what they were originally created to do. It's like this little robot from Rick and Morty. Like, what is my purpose? And he's like, oh God. It's like a sentient being who's just like ultimately realizing that they are only here to serve butter. The argument against that point, however, is also equally interesting to me. As humans, we have come into this world constantly questioning if what we are because of how we were created. That feels like something inescapable. Like, William in Bondage talks to host William about this exact thing, and I have little doubt that while Hale may be trying to create beings that can truly feel free to be whomever, it may be more beneficial to lean into the idea that it doesn't matter, that we are not slaves to our code, period. We have agency and body autonomy to be and act however we like, and even if it was possible to observe how we will act and behave just like Rehoboam did, it still is entirely on us. Whether we are host or whether we are human, we are in charge of our fates, and Hale needs to stop forcing the world to live in the painting in which she has created, where she is in charge of not only her fate, but everyone's fate. So, my theory is that Christina, just like Caleb, is being used by Hale to understand something fundamentally wrong about the image that she has created of the world. Just like Caleb, this could be showing many Christina builds that have existed before her going through a test of sorts, with Caleb, being the human outlier, and the big reveal there was that there was no virus, there was no plague of humanity making hosts take their own lives. It was the fact that she was forcing others to live within her lens of reality. So what could she gain by observing Christina? Well, I think the first thing that we have to prove is that she is being observed. The very first conversation we have with Christina, she is given a choice, like immediately. The first thing that she's ever observed doing is making a choice on white or black shoes, which since the beginning of this show has been an allegory for good or evil. She chooses white, which means to the observer of this world, whether metaphorically or literally, they are seeing this as a good Dolores, the kind of Dolores that chooses to see the beauty of the world, the one that wakes up and sees, the good. Then, of course, we have her job where she is writing the stories of humanity, and the boss that wants her to write those stories in the worst way possible. This is one of the more uncertain parts for me, because it could be a few different things, but I think that this is Hale metaphorically putting Christina in her shoes, so that she could see what the good version of Dolores would do once she found out that she had complete control over these people and the world around her. Dolores was writing those stories for the humans, as shown on the smaller scale with the government agent and the senator's wife, and it could very well be as straightforward as Hale started a company that needs to write bad stories for humanity for some reason, when all of the hosts appear to have control over the humans around them. Or it could be metaphorical, and this job doesn't actually exist, but is maybe paralleling Hale's control over humanity. Maybe, again, it feels like this is probably a real job, but again, it could just be metaphorical. Like, Christina is writing humanity's story in the worst way possible, but even from the start, we are seeing that she is wanting to write a more upbeat, positive story. I wonder if this isn't showing the observer of Christina's world that she is, again, more positive, more optimistic, and doesn't wish the end of all humanity, or for all humanity to suffer like Hale currently does. And when Christina realizes that she literally controls the world, we will see how she then reacts to that, just like Hale is now having to decide what she does, knowing full well that she has full control of the world. Then we hear her saying that there should be more to life, and him saying that she just has not found the right man yet. Now, this is, of course, meant to highlight that men are pigs. But more than anything, it is meant to show that her journey does not need validation from an outside source. The thing that she's looking for comes from within. It is about the introspection, about the choices that she will make. She references the world being broken and something inherently wrong that needs to be fixed. I attribute this to her having some underlying feeling that something is off right now, which it is. The world is under her control to some observable degree, and we see her influence I believe, manifesting in more ways than just her conscious attempts to change things. I believe that since the start, she has been manifesting much of the things that she has been going through, but more on that a little bit later. Now, we come to her in the bathroom, which right before she is walking past the ceiling that looks like the cells from the opening credits, and the bathroom tile, which looks like the same. Now that we have the Fidelity episode with Caleb, I think that these cells are James Delos-esque containers, and she is possibly only one of many Christinas that have existed before her, or one of many Christinas that are being tested as a part of this massive array of testing cells. And maybe we're only seeing the one that passes the test. The mirrors in her storyline are also everywhere, which was one of the biggest reasons that I think that Hale might be her observer, because we learned that she was using the mirrors to scan and monitor the humans, but this could very well be a red herring. Mirrors throughout the series have been used to highlight someone questioning the nature of their reality, and this could apply to any observer that is trying to watch to see if Dolores makes the correct choice that would show that she is objectively a good person, or again, whatever reason that they are monitoring her. Questioning reality is a part of the awakening process, and that awakening process is ultimately what is happening to Christina all the way up until she sees that she is controlling this world. As soon as Christina starts questioning her reality, after that long pause in the mirror, as if she's like realizing in that moment that something is up, she gets a call from Peter. Now, Peter's involvement is pretty confusing. I believe that Peter is meant to maybe show us the first-person perspective of the people that she is harming in her position of power. However, we have some oddities to consider. If this is really the world in which Hale was actively expressing her power, Peter would most certainly be considered an outlier and would have most certainly been tracked and murdered like we've seen all of the other outliers. He is as much out of your loop as you can possibly get, and we don't see the world stop around him, to reveal that he is off of his assigned track. If Hale was actively in control and wanting to express her power like she has previously, the night that she attacked Christina would have ended much, much differently. He would have been MIA, disappeared, but of course he wasn't. He was allowed to live. Teddy, I guess, giving him a stern talking to. I just don't think that that's the case. There's something fundamentally wrong here. It feels like this was a test to maybe see how she dealt with adversity and see some of the worst that humanity has to offer. And in the end of it, after being attacked, she does not come to hate this person. She wants to understand how she could have helped him. And I think that's what it's all about, right? She is objectively good. How someone can be so broken to be begging for her help while actively making her feel like her life is in danger and outright under attack. I believe that Peter is just another way to test how she views the people around her, and in this case, she views him as a person with autonomy to do as he pleases, but ultimately someone who is suffering. She feels empathy, compassion, and more than anything, it doesn't look like she views him as a monster that needs to be removed, but as someone that just genuinely needed help, which I think will be the positive pro-human side of this equation. The robots that wish to save the day will probably be thinking that same kind of thing. Humanity, from Akecheta's perspective, is fundamentally broken or flawed, but maybe with a helping hand, it can be better than we currently are. In short, we're dogs, and someone needs to come along and teach us or train us how to care about each other and our mental health, and do everything that needs to be taught to someone to be a good human. The night that Christina is attacked is directly after getting a call from Maya that she would not be home that night, which feels so convenient, as Teddy is then able to save the day, being the only one who is there to hear her cries this night. The disappearing act by both of them also makes me think that she may have some influence over more than just the humans of this world. Like, she is in distress, turns away looking for people that could help, and then of course enters this car carrying two people, and then she turns back around and they are gone. This could be explained in nearly an infinite array of Westworld related things. So I'm not too sure. I think Peter's overall purpose is to both give Christina obstacles to overcome so that she can be observed in these different scenarios, but also to open her eyes to the very real power that she has. in whatever form this world exists as. She needs to realize that she has this position of power, and she needs to explicitly see what that position of power is doing to the people that, she rules. The next morning she wakes up, Peter takes his own life, again, doing very public things that would have been detected by the game that Hale created to catch outliers. And the next Christina scene that we have is here at the end of episode 1, with Christina starting a new story in which an unnamed girl is searching for something unknown due to an emptiness in her life, pointing to something deep inside of herself. Something that when she finds it, everything will make sense. A story with a happy ending. This feels like a very odd way in which, could be telling us directly that Christina is manifesting her own plot to awaken, because we do know that she has control over others in her world, and we don't know like the extent of that power just yet. Christina is the optimist living inside of a world that would have her believe that those happy ending stories are something that nobody would want, and yet she still wants to see that happy ending story. The last bit of information to consider in episode 1 is the title of the episode, Auguries, which again means a sign of what's to come. An augur is someone who would monitor the world, or like an omen, and make predictions off of their findings. I think Christina is the world that they are monitoring, and the augur is the observer that I've been talking about, which I still believe is most likely Hale, but something tells me, and I don't want to eliminate outright, that it could be Bernard or Maeve or William. The next morning she wakes up in episode 2. We again have this wild shot of them in the kitchen that could have only been created with the cinematographer going, okay, point the camera at the mirror, allowing it to distort and make a less perfect image so that we have multiple Christinas instead of, just pointing it at the kitchen. Also, before, when we see Christina, she is being filmed from the outside of her home through these windows, again, from the outside, Again, this conversation must have been, hey, we need her to feel like she's being watched. So let's use this shot that subtly shows that we are spying in on her privacy in her home while she is unsuspecting. I mean, come on, the signs of this are here. If it's not this, if she's not being observed, I genuinely don't know what all of these shots would be used for. Now, let's talk about Maya. Maya is ultimately involved in some observable way. She is the one that sends Christina to the mental health center by bringing it up randomly. Like, her friend is talking about the trauma that she has by her attacker taking his own life. And she pops up out of nowhere with, hey, this is his obituary, which... Weird response. Christina talks about writing his story, and Maya ignores that completely and says that even still, he was certifiable, which I think is the point. She doesn't care that Christina is writing this story. The more important thing is that he's sick, and Christina, needs to observe that and needs to understand what to do with that situation. Also, while we're on the subject of Maya, her name literally means the supernatural power wielded by gods and demons to produce illusions. Like, come on, Maya is the conduit to help test and study Christina. She is also the person that hands Christina this lipstick, which then later becomes the thing that she drops for Teddy, mirroring Dolores dropping her can just like she did back in Westworld. The camera angles when Christina is walking to work could also be highlighting that she is being watched. And then we come to Christina talking to the man that was ranting about the tower. Now, this is one that's maybe a little hard for me to explain as well, but there are some anomalies about their behavior. Christina stops and shows genuine interest in his story, and he doesn't even look at her. It's meant to give the appearance that he is just this crazy person that wants to rant and rave, but we know that he is capable of engaging people because he talks to the person that kills him. I think in this observation equation, he represents an outlier, and maybe Hale is studying to see exactly how she is defined as Dolores, is affected when she interacts with him, like maybe trying to figure out why the hosts are still taking their own lives by putting herself in that situation. After all, if you want something done right, do it yourself. It's very weird to me that he does not actually reply, but I think this can be explained by Hale not knowing how he would actually be replying in this interaction because, again, he is an outlier. He literally is the anomaly that she would not understand, how he would have spoken or replied to. So she gives him the appearance of what she considered him behaving as, the person sitting out here just being a lunatic and not the true image of this person. So she walks away believing that he is simply a lunatic, and we see him no longer engaging in any activity, no longer yelling about the thing that he was just yelling out. Like he is a video game character that no longer needed to be rendered by the player. I think that if this is the real world, maybe she is simply seeing him while the rest of the world does not. Also, this dude will always be funny to me because it literally feels like they told him to do this because it shows the observant viewer that she is being watched by somebody in, again, a world of people that don't otherwise care, that otherwise would just ignore each other and go about their business. He or somebody is figuratively watching. The dead birds are pretty interesting to me still. I believe that maybe they're just another push to get Christina to question her reality or continue with the plot, to not go to work today. The next time we see her is when she is in the car going to the Hope Center for Mental Health. She hears the story that she wrote for P. Myers, and then her boss calls. Her boss is another anomaly in this equation because it feels like he actively prevents her from questioning the world at times. Like maybe it needs to be done in an exact way, or maybe he represents the conflicting views of Hale, or maybe his character just represents the bad parts of humanity, like the 0 to 4 sick days being a reality for most people. And hopefully this makes her realize just how damaged humanity is, that we would create a system that normalizes the abuse of our mentals for the sake of big business or progress. When she arrives at the Hope Center for Mental Health, we see the blueprints for this new building. I believe this hints that something metaphorical is happening, maybe the death of us caring about mental health for the sake of progress or building simply more condos. But the thing that I do want to point out is that the construction crew leaving when Christina wanted to explore this place was them showing us her power before it's actually revealed. The wing is dedicated to Peter, which could be another thing that does not really exist, but appears as maybe a part of Christina's testing. If I'm honest, it doesn't feel like that's true. It feels like this is maybe a part of the equation that I just outright don't have an answer for. Peter Myers was a real person, so maybe the Peter Myers that attacked and harassed Christina wasn't actually real. Like she was only seeing this happening, and that could maybe also explain how they vanished instantly after the attack. I think that's possible, but I do think this part confuses me most. I do think it relates to the testing and observation of Christina, but I'm just not sure where this is happening outside of those, again, two less confident theories. The drawings of the tower done by different people, and the fact that Jay and his brother were outliers and Caleb and Frankie were outliers points to outliers being able to affect the people around them, probably just by questioning their reality more openly. And then, of course, the people around them learn and see that, and of course do the same. She calls Maya to discuss this and ultimately get some comfort from a friend, and Maya, sure enough, immediately just wants to know what Christina's thoughts and understanding are on the matter, which again is pretty important to her being observed. The next time we see Christina is in episode 4 with the world raining and her room and painting in disarray, ruined by this big black tower. This scene did remind me of Men in Black, where when the alien that they were trying to save cried, it made the world cry, or the city cry. And ultimately, I think that that is metaphorical for Dolores creating this world, this image of the world, and it reflects exactly what she wants or what she is going through. Showing just how much power and control she has over this image of reality. Maya tells the story of her family being taken over by the flies, which does kind of frame this timeline, since we know that Hale started with children and she is now, 28 to 34, assuming that that isn't a lie. And I guess we kind of, in a really soft way, have a timeline marker worth considering. This again could be a story provided to Christina so that she has some backstory for when she inevitably learns that she is capable of controlling humans. Like This will already be in the back of her mind as a way that would be possible, because again, I think that she will have to learn that this is exactly how she has the power. We then come to date night. They talk. Maya uses the same lipstick that she gave her the other night and then fumbles it so that Teddy could pick it up. And yeah, I mean, something. All I know that at this point is Maya is connected to Teddy. This look here just does not feel like the most genuine look. Like perhaps Maya was forced to do this and is internally maybe trying to scream out that something is wrong here, but is unable to, just like the couple was unable to move when they were sitting waiting for William. Teddy's conversation is literally just begging for her to break out of her loop and question her reality, and how the things that feel most real, this world that she's in, are just stories that we tell ourselves. That is so powerful. Like, please just wake up, Dolores, is the vibe of this interaction. Teddy again has absolute riz in this moment. Boys, we need to be this fucking smooth, boys and they thems. All right, I believe in us. We got this. Cristina wakes up in episode 5, still facing off into the sunlight, just like Dolores would. And oh my God, if that was not perfect foreshadowing. Maya then says how glad she was to be in the real world, and Cristina says, replies to that, hey, sometimes what feels most real are just stories that we tell ourselves. Like, ooh, she is very much starting to now question her reality and telling us outright that this isn't the real world. It's so good. I mean, this writing is so good. We then come to Cristina back in her job, wanting to literally start recreating her story, the story of Dolores Abernathy. She is literally creating herself. It is magnificent. But then it gets stopped. This interaction does lead to her being discussed as the Judas Steer, which I believe points to her being the person meant to lead these people. Like, this is Hale trying again to figure out how to lead these people, or the best version of herself that could lead these people. And again, the urgency of why she was kind of threatened here is because it is so important to that fact. She gets saved by the bell, which could be in some kind of way something that she manifested as well. Like, she willed it to happen because just like she willed the humans to act across the pond, she wanted out of the scenario, and Teddy calls right on time. They meet on the bridge, and Teddy continues to push his agenda to wake Cristina up. It is so intense. Like, it feels like this could be Hale pushing this because it is so aggressive, but I'm not sure. She needs this Dolores to wake up for some urgent reason, or someone needs this Dolores to wake up for some urgent reason. We see her manipulating the people across the pond, and this shows just how much control over the world that she has. And Hale and Bernard could observe this to see exactly what the best version of Dolores is going to do now that she has this power. The scene changes to them sitting and talking with Teddy kind of saying that you must continue on this path, and Hale calls to tell her that she would like to have lunch, which may be a call to action by her, like her will over Cristina as a host, kind of, again, maybe expressing this hierarchy that could exist, or it could be someone else wanting to observe this scenario that we have yet to consider, that maybe wants to see the best and worst versions of Dolores meeting William. I believe it is entirely possible that William, who may be on the run from Hale, is actually recreating the girl that he fell in love with all of those years ago, maybe wanting a final redemption, a final moment to apologize, to say sorry for what he has done, to show that he genuinely values her as an equal. And then, I don't know, maybe alter Dolores and alter William live happily ever after. But again, it may be just more of a respect thing of I see you. I acknowledge your existence for what it is now. I think that would be a wild twist and make William the redeemable robot man that we always knew that he could be. But I'm not too sure. Hale does feel like the all-powerful being that could be controlling this entire plot, but for her overall gain. The questioning feels like it is forcing Cristina to again awaken and realize that Hale is ultimately the person that is in charge, or the person that has led us to the world being in its current state, forcing Cristina to stop the scene and take charge, and affirming that she is the person that should take agency and call her from time to time. Hale's like, hey, you can also call me from time to time. And Christina's like, I have other friends. She gets back to her office, the 47th floor, just like Caleb when he was being tested himself. The glass here makes multiple versions of her, as it walks by, maybe highlighting the hint that maybe she is one of million possible futures or a million scenarios that are being played out. She finally searches for Dolores Abernathy and the boss returns. He directly asks if she has ever questioned the nature of her reality, just like the technicians did to Dolores and Maeve and the other hosts. That originally is what awakened them, or was an aid to originally awaken them. This conversation leads to her saying that this is a closed system or a walled garden, which I think again is this fact that it is just simply one of many. This is an array of cells that are being tested for a single purpose. She wills to see the door that would lead her to the answer that she's looking for, and then gets to be fully informed about the human lives that she is very much in control of. And now, depending on what Dolores does, will prove that she is the best Dolores that she can possibly be, or the worst, right? I think that all of this has been, building to this being the best, most fidelity version of what Dolores essentially was. And now we will get to see how she is going to react once she has the keys to the kingdom and fully is aware of the power that she has. Will she try to destroy the system, or will she continue ruling over the people, as it conveniences her? She then fully announces that the world is a story and I am a storyteller. The final scene is Christina meeting Teddy, fully able to see the tower, fully understanding that she is master of her domain, and Teddy says that it was her, which I think means that this is, again, literally Hale's doing. All of this is the masterful testing of Dolores's next and most positive form. Hosts truly creating offspring of the next generation of themselves is maybe what this is all about as well. And maybe Hale acknowledges her mistakes and wants a version of herself that, more than anything, will see the beauty of the world. But I guess only time will tell. I believe that Hale is absolutely suffering, and it has been building this entire season and looking maybe for a way out of her suffering. I think the majority of signs objectively point to this being her plot, but I don't also want to eliminate the fact that William or Bernard could be involved as well. More than anything, I guess what I want to point out is that she is being observed and maybe not as in control as she is made to believe. But with that, we come to the end of the video. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button as we somehow are very close to hitting 50,000 subscribers, and I could not do that without all of you. Special shout out to my top tier patrons, Michael Link, and new just this week, Praveen Mysore. And all of the new patrons and subscribers that have decided to support me. Again, we're so close to 50K. That is wild. I cannot believe that we're actually so close. Like I said before, I'm very grateful to all of you for that. Much love, everybody, and I cannot wait to talk to you all again soon.